Okay, so welcome. My name is Derek Laventure, and this is Retiring the Traditional 40-Hour Work Week, Designing a Compensation Model for the 21st Century. Just going to talk about some unique approaches that Consensus Enterprises is taking to worker compensation. We thought it might be useful to share some of these ideas. So before we go any further, I want to acknowledge that I live and work in Chubuktuk in Mi'kmaq, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Deep respect and gratitude to the people who are past, present, and future caretakers of this land. I just want to encourage you to take a moment to think about the territory and people who are indigenous to wherever you are at the moment. And just to further situate myself, I'm Derek Laventure. I generally use he and they pronouns, and these are some of the intersectional labels that apply to me. I'm a white, middle class, able bodied, genderqueer settler. I have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. You can do the math. I graduated in 2000. Been in the Drupal community for about 20 odd years. I'm a founding partner of Consensus and also a Tai Chi student and instructor. Feel free to ask me about any of those things if we meet sometime. I'm really excited to be here. Before we dive in, I just want to offer some thanks to a few key players that put me here for this talk. So first of all, Faye Lauren, who approached me a couple months back and really suggested submitting this talk based on a blog post that I had put up on our website a while back. And they've been hugely supportive and encouraging about putting the talk together and getting it ready for today. So thanks, Faye. DDI camp organizers, who I'm sure you all know, have worked tirelessly as volunteers to put together this amazing event. I've been able to attend a few of the sessions this afternoon, and they're all excellent. So thanks to all the organizers. I want to just shout out my amazing team at Consensus for relentlessly positive support, feedback, ideation, and just being great folks all around to work with. And last but not least, all of you out there, curious and interested folks who I can't see through this medium, showing up to hear me talk. Appreciate your interest. So, what are we talking about here today? Key ideas that results-oriented workplaces empower us to collaborate and do our best work. So at Consensus, we have kind of always had this ethos from the outset. We wanted to share some of the things that we do to put that kind of results-oriented ethos in place, and suggest maybe you can incorporate some of those ideas into your organization. So for us, we value our humanity first and foremost. Even as technologies, we recognize that we have lives outside of work. And we've developed a salary process over the years that gives us a lot of control over our schedule. So I wanted to just share the story of how we got to where we are today, give you a bit of a tour of how the tool and that process work to do that, to give that control over our work schedule, and share some of those resources and maybe even some teasers at the end of other things that we're doing along these lines. So Consensus started out, there were 4 of us, senior technology professionals, all of us in the industry for many years, and we found that we worked well together. At the time, kind of most of us, really our goal was to find good work that would support our families. As we continued working together, we discovered that we had some shared ambitions. So it's been a good fit. So that was 4 years ago. I'm now happy to say we have a team of 9 of us. This is a list of the members that have joined us since. These folks are all amazing and wonderful, as I mentioned. I've listed Shona here because I still kind of consider her part of our team. She left us recently for possibly even more ambitious things to go off and work on ethics in tech. Really would encourage you to go and check her out. Some of you may know Scott. He actually told me yesterday he designed the DDI logo here, so that's pretty cool. And if you grab these slides, all of these are links to those folks' profiles, so you can find out more about them. In addition to that, this group of us have developed and articulated some guiding texts for ourselves, a shared worldview, some core values, and mission and vision statements. So just quickly, this is a succinct version of our shared worldview. Truth matters, right? Data and good faith debate with diverse voices are how we build a shared understanding of reality. People come first. We prioritize people over profit, and we believe that no one should have to compromise their values for material gain. We are a mission and values driven organization, so our policies are always driven by our goals. We believe that nothing is written in stone. We're constantly looking to evolve, grow, and change. Right? We also believe that a group is more than the sum of its parts, and through distributed and flexible leadership, we strive for healthy dynamics that unlock the power of that group. Finally, information wants to be free, but privacy must be respected. So we believe that copyleft software, documentation, and culture is the only way to ensure private information remains private. And I'm sure for those of you in the Drupal community, these are familiar ideas. What do we value? Trust and respect, first and foremost. These are the foundation of any strong organization. Right? We value everyone's voice. We seek consensus on important decisions, hence the name, recognizing and respecting that we are equal but different. Right? We value diversity in this sense. We value professional maturity. It's fundamental to our success, and so we encourage a growth mindset in everything that we do. We value positive impact. We strive to make a positive impact, and we try to support each other in doing that, seeking out new opportunities and challenges. And finally, we value solidarity with each other and with our communities. We believe contributing, collaborating, and supporting promote our mutual success. Finally, as just a quick view of where we've come to today. This is close as we come to an organizational chart. This is our sort of circle diagram of the governance, really the governance model that we're using. So we've come to divide ourselves up into these different pieces. I'm just trying to give an indication. We've grown quite a bit in the last few years, and we've tried to do so thoughtfully, and we'll continue to do so. So this tool I'm talking about today is a small piece of that. So from those humble beginnings, the four of us, at the outset, we were all contractors. We would punch our time and periodically invoice the company in order to get paid. We were hyper conscious at the time that we didn't have a lot of spare cash to play with as a company, and so we decided to hold off on making ourselves employees until we gained some stability. Right. Once we had some of that stability, we wanted to go on salary, right? We wanted to have a regular paycheck coming in, and know that we could count on it. However, we were really interested in maintaining the flexibility that we saw from coming from a contractor position, right? We were setting our own schedule. We were working whenever we felt like it. These are things that we found really valuable to us in our work, in our lives, right? It allows us to have small children at home, all of this is coming before COVID, in fact. So it's been interesting to live through the pandemic and sort of see these things being taken up in other realms. So how do we do that? We came up with this idea called quarterly salary adjustments. We're working on a better name for it because that's a little bit clunky, but this is how we've referred to it, right? And the big idea is just that we calculate our paycheck based on how much we worked in the previous 3-month period. And then we use our average weekly schedule from that previous period to calculate our paycheck for the current 3 months, right? Why do we do that? I mean, like I say, it gives us this flexibility, this agency. It accommodates folks who don't or can't or won't work 40 full hours a week. In other words, anybody who's kind of a full human who has a life outside of work, which we encourage all of us to do. It also empowers us, right? It means that we don't need to ask permission to take time off. We set our own schedule. Even vacation when people are going to be gone for extended periods of time. We don't really have an approval process per se. We encourage folks to check in and make sure that their client expectations and any deadlines or responsibilities that they have are taken care of. We try to avoid, having too many of us on vacation at the same time. But generally speaking, you're free to schedule your vacation when it makes sense for you. So I'll give a quick example of how this works, right? Every individual, every team member has an hourly rate associated with them. I'll give a bit of a hint of how we set that up later, but that's fixed for the purposes of this process, right? So all we do is we track our hours. So over the course of our first quarter, for us, the fiscal year begins in August. So August, September, October, I track my time. At the end of that, we figure out that I averaged 32 hours a week, right? So at the beginning of quarter two in November, we start paying me at a 32 hours a week times my hourly rate, right? I get my paycheck for those 3 months based on that 32 hours that I worked in August, September, October. Then November, December, and January, I do it again. Turns out I average 35 hours a week. I'm up a little bit. Oh, that means for quarter three, February through April, we pay me 35 hours per week, right? Times my hourly rate. Just keeps going like that, right? In quarter three, I keep tracking. Maybe I've gone down a little bit. I had some other stuff going on, painting my house, whatever it is. My hours went down a little bit. No big deal. The start of quarter four, my pay gets adjusted slightly and it comes down. So some pros and cons for this. Pros here really this sense of agency and control. It's hard to overestimate. Really, I would say the satisfaction that comes from being able to set our own schedule and have this level of agency is really powerful. It means that small changes in our schedule average out over time. So we find that the 3 month, the sort of quarterly period, is a good length of time, so that we're not having to do this process. We're doing this process relatively regularly, but not so frequently that small variations would have a big effect. So if I have a couple of weeks where things are really hectic, or maybe I have some family drop in unexpectedly, or my kid is sick and they're home and I'm not getting as much work done, I have an opportunity over the course of the period to kind of adjust for that a little bit if I want to, or even if I don't. We find that if the rest of my schedule for that period is relatively constant, those couple of weeks don't drag the average down significantly. So generally speaking, we don't find huge variations from quarter to quarter, right? It also means unpaid overtime is not a thing. We just get paid for our work. We punch everything we do, and we get paid for it, right? We don't have to sort of worry about being under or over our sort of expected amount of work. And there's no need to explain life happens kinds of situations. Life happens. Everybody knows it. We find that it allows us the freedom to just be really transparent about stuff coming up, and people can drop out if an urgent situation arises. And again, we're all sort of responsible, professionally mature people, so we take care of the expectations of our client and our responsibilities to the rest of our team. But there's also an understanding that stuff comes up, life happens. Right? In terms of cons, crickets. We tried our best to find some cons here, and honestly can't come up with any that we've experienced or seen. We've been doing this for a few years, and it works pretty well. Initially, we found some of our team members have been a little bit hesitant because it's sort of non-traditional. It's a little bit confusing to get your head around the first time. But we've found ourselves reassuring people that if you work a consistent schedule, then nothing changes, right? If you just punch your 35 hours or whatever it is a week, then your paycheck is constant, and it's as if you're on a regular salaried kind of job, right? But it means that you also have this built-in flexibility. So if things do change a little bit, it's not a big deal. You don't need to go to your manager and ask to change your anything, right? It just gets rolled into the next quarterly adjustment and everything's fine. So I will say that we're only just extending this to all our employees. To date, we've only had it for the partners because we had the freedom to apply it to ourselves without having to worry about legal aspects. But I will also say that everyone on our team really wants this, right? They see the benefit of it. They understand that it's not a major difference, but it affords them this flexibility. So we had to do some figuring out of the legal aspects in order to put it into our employment contracts. But that wasn't a huge deal at the end of the day. A couple of challenges that I could think of. Right, we noticed that bringing in new recruits into the process is a little bit tricky because it relies on having this previous quarter's worth of data, some kind of a baseline to go by, right? So what we do for new folks is we just, during the first 3 months, we just pay them hourly, right? We figure out their hourly rate at the beginning, and then we pay them for whatever time they work. There's a bit of a delay per usual to let them finish punching for the 2 week period or whatever it is. Similarly, when you're leaving the company, there's a bit of a discrepancy that can arise. Like I say, generally speaking, we don't find that there's major variation from quarter to quarter, so we just work it out, right? If it's if you end up sort of getting paid a little bit lower because your schedule was more hours in the current quarter when you're leaving than the one previous. We just pay you the difference as you leave, right? We just sort of settle accounts, as it were. And similarly, the other way, the company writes off the difference if your schedule was lower. So that's one set. Slightly more challenging situation. This model presupposes a trust in our workforce to achieve results on our own schedule. And like I say, trust and respect is foundational for us. So that's not actually a problem for this process because we're already working on the basis that we trust our team to do the right thing. Right? This doesn't solve the problem of people faking their timesheets or pulling other kinds of shenanigans like that. But again, this comes back to trust, right? It's not if people are going to be faking their timesheets, they're going to be doing that anyway. So we don't really see that as a problem with this process per se. I will note that we have a fair bit of transparency and granularity in our time tracking, so there's a certain amount of accountability built in, and generally speaking, we find that just sort of validating when we do the adjustment that, hey, this person's numbers look kind of out of whack from last time. What's going on? Maybe there was a crunch with the client project they're on, and so it's understandable that they worked a whole bunch more. Maybe they were off sick for a while, and so their time is low, or whatever. We try to look at it to make sure that it's reasonable, but we're not really kind of tracking anybody in great detail unless unless a need arises. Is this going to scale? Some of you may be thinking we're a small team, right? And we're aspiring to grow more, but we think it can. We don't see any reason inherently that this can't scale up. The admin overhead is fairly low, and again, if our recruitment process is working to find us team members who are accountable, responsible, that we have trust and respect for, then there's no reason this can't continue to work for us. So moving on, I'll give you a little bit of a tour of the tool. Right now, this is really just in the form of a spreadsheet that I'll show you kind of how it works. But a quick review of what happens, right? So at the start of each quarter, we go into our time tracking tool and we pull reports for the last 3 months. I said for each member of the team here. For us, we use Harvest. And so this is really just one report that shows for the quarter everybody's hours for the month. We break it down into the 3-month periods. We plug that data into our spreadsheet. So there's just some spots for each team member. We plug in for the 3 months of the quarter, what their total number of hours that they punched was, right? The spreadsheet, this tool already knows how many work days were in the quarter and accounts for holidays and weekends. And so then we incorporate any time off that people have taken during the quarter and sort of subtract that from the available work time that they had and end up calculating an average number of hours per week. Right, then we simply multiply that average by their hourly rate, and that gives us weekly pay. So, for us, originally we were paying ourselves bi-weekly, and so we would just multiply that weekly number by 2, and that would be what our bookkeeper puts on our paychecks. More recently, we switched to like a semi-monthly pay, so twice a month instead of every 2 weeks. And in that in that case, we do a slightly more a slightly different calculation, essentially, right, to come up with that number for 2 paychecks a month. So let me show you our spreadsheet here. I'm hoping this is going to be clear to folks. I've bumped the font size way up, so trying to strike a balance here between visibility and not just giving you sort of a periscope into this great big sheet. But so here, first off, I'll show you the config tab here. This one changes very rarely. Basically, you would add a new person into the list of employees when somebody new joins the team. And very occasionally, we just had this new National Day for Truth and Reconciliation became a thing, so we had to add this one to our table, right? So this one is really just these sort of key things. Our fiscal year, as I said, begins on August 1st. We have our list of employees and the province that they reside in. That factors into the holidays because the different jurisdictions have different holidays that we have to count or not. So then this stuff feeds into the calculations sheet. So this one, again, changes almost never because it's really just sort of pulling intermediate calculations. So we have, the dates that the quarters start and end, how many work days are in each. This one accounts for just the time in between these 2 days. We have time off by quarter, right? So this tallies up the time off tab that I'll show you in a second for each person and broken down by quarter. And then we do this calculation of net work days per quarter. So this is the one that does the total days and subtracts the time off that each person took, as well as accounting for the holidays, right? So over here on our time off tab, we have just like a simple, if silly large table with all of the days down the left. Each person gets a set of columns here. The V column is for vacation days, the S column is for sick days, and the O is for other, just in case there are, somebody takes a leave of absence or something along those lines that's not in the other categories. So as we go along, we put in our numbers here. If I take a vacation here, I just set it in the appropriate day under my column, and then it tallies these up, right? And then these feed into our subsequent calculations over on the calculations tab. So, and then the good stuff. This is the core of it, right? So our payroll tabs, I've just left 2 here in our template. But the idea is that you would have 4 of these for each quarter of the year, and then you sort of reset the sheet and start a fresh one for the beginning of each new year. These yellow cells are for the data entry. So these are where we put those numbers that I was saying we look up in the time tracking report, right? Those add up to this total. The total figures into this average hours per week, right? So we figure out days per quarter based on that intermediate calculation. We subtract the number of days off the person took, and then divide the one by the other to come up with this average hours per week. Then we have our data entry cell again. Like I say, hourly rate can vary per employee, but we just end up multiplying this number by this number to get a weekly rate. And then, like I say, for us, we do the math to turn that into a semi-monthly amount. Our bookkeeper uses these numbers for the duration of the second quarter, right? So in August, I would start getting paid this much if I'm employee 1. So in quarter 2, I would come over here and go and look up that report. So just show you a kind of quick example, right? If I worked 110 hours in August, 120 in September, and 130 in October, that averages out to 30 and a half a week. And if my rate is that $50, then this is what my paycheck will look like. Easy peasy. Like I say, this is really the only sort of administrative step, and we do this once every 3 months. Simple matter of just looking up the numbers in our time tracker and plugging these in here to figure out the calculation. There's another quick example for you. Maybe I'll just pause here and ask if there are any questions about the tool specifically. I'll take questions for the whole thing at the end as well, but just in case there's anything unclear while I'm here looking at the spreadsheet. Any uncertainty? I know that there's a bit of a delay, so I'll just pause for a moment in case anyone wants to chime in. Okay, looks like we have nothing so far, so I'll carry on. Feel free to come back to this if you do have questions at the end. So coming back here, I just want to share some resources. Like I said, we're really interested in sharing these ideas, and so I've, in the conjunction with preparing this talk, I've just published a bunch of this information. So first, a little bit of context. Like I say, for us, we use Harvest as our time tracker, but really any tool like that will do, assuming it will let you, look up a monthly report for your teammates to figure out how many hours they punched. Right? For us, this is pretty easy because we track time anyway for clients, right? We're already punching ourselves in to keep track of how much we need to bill clients. So that's not a big deal. If that's not your context, then you might need to adjust if you wanted to incorporate these ideas, but that's how it works for us. The policy, just noted the goals here that we have. This is directly from our policy page in our operations manual. Describes how we adjust payroll. Basically, just sort of encodes what I've described to you here about how this process works, what the goals are, and lets employees know kind of what to expect on this basis, right? Here's the text of the policy itself. Again, I won't read it in detail, but describes exactly what I've said to you today, that we adjust each quarter, we incorporate holidays and sick days, and your base hourly rate is multiplied by that average hours per week a month to get to your paycheck. The next thing I'll share just needs a bit of a disclaimer. Please note that I, Derek, I cannot stress this enough, I am not a lawyer. So I'm going to show you the language from our employment contract clause. This was vetted by our lawyers to confirm that it is both legal and coherent with the rest of our employment contract. But obviously, if you were going to incorporate this yourself, we wanted to share this because it might be a good baseline to bring to your lawyer and say, we want to do something like this, but you should absolutely get it reviewed before you incorporate this. And last but not least, we published this tool. So that spreadsheet, this template one that I was just showing you, is here on GitLab.com. I just created this project this week as a place to set this stuff. So you can see the open document spreadsheet here. I added the employment contract clause, the instructions for how we do the change, as well as the policy. So if this is interesting to you, by all means, feel free to grab this. It's GPL'd, and we'd love to hear about it if you decide to use it. But wait, there's more. I said I would give you a little bit of a teaser. This quarterly salary adjustment process is just one of the ways that we try to encode fairness into the organization at Consensus. So a couple of teasers for you about other initiatives along similar lines. So the first one is that we're in the process of moving towards worker cooperative legal structure. So this means that workers own the capital and have democratic control at the sort of board level, right? This is really in line with how we operate anyway. Practically speaking, the distinction between the partners and the employees is fairly minor at this point, but not insignificant. And so we want to go that extra step to become a worker-owned cooperative, so that everyone is really on equal footing from that standpoint. Sociocracy is related, and I mentioned it earlier. This is our governance model that we've adopted in the last year or so. I encourage you to check out this link if it's interesting to you at all. My shorthand for this is that it's kind of a way of scaling up consensus decision making. So, like our name implies, we really take consensus seriously, and we've operated from the beginning on the basis that all of our important decisions are made by consensus. And like anybody who has experienced or done consensus in a group, once it starts to get beyond 4 or 5 people in a consensus-based meeting, your meeting starts to feel interminable. And debate seems to go on for endless amounts of time, and it's all very good discussion, but you get the feeling like things could be more efficient. So sociocracy has some really interesting ideas about how to divide up the organization, segment off the areas of responsibility, and give subgroups, or what they call circles, the power to make decisions within their domain. So the overall organization delegates, this circle is in charge of people. That's the circle that I am the leader for, and how I represent consensus here today. Right, we deal with everything to do with recruitment and HR, as it were, all of those kinds of people related policies and processes. So that's sociocracy. The last one I'll mention is a little bit more involved. So I've mentioned that we've been growing and are planning to continue growing thoughtfully. And it starts to raise a lot of questions for us, right? Such as, how do we equitably account for the impact we have on the success of the company? How do we identify and adjust the behaviors that we value as an organization, right? These things are going to change over time. How do we account for that? Beyond that, even, how do we moderate intrinsic bias while seeking objective assessment metrics? Right? How do we work against pay gaps based on gender, race, and other lines of oppression, and create radical transparency in our salary process? How do we recognize that plenty more than just engineering skills, technical expertise goes into a successful technology company? And even more than that, how do we improve the agency we have as workers to improve our salary? How do we minimize the impact of negotiation and other skills that are unevenly distributed along lines of oppression? Right? How do we put everyone on an even footing? And our answer to that is that we've come up with a competency-driven, peer-reviewed metrics system, a series of policies and processes that recognize diversity as our strength and double down on it. We seek it out in as many aspects as we possibly can. We understand that competencies are key behaviors that impact the success of the organization, and those are core to how we understand the value that each individual brings to the success of the company. Right. So our tool, the thing that we've come up with on this front, is competency driven, equity informed, peer reviewed metrics for how we're doing and how to improve. So we have an annual review process where you gather with your peers and you identify what are the competencies that you're using in your job, and together with your peer group, figure out what level you're at, what degree of expertise do you have in that particular competency, and then based on that information, we put that into a calculator that factors all of those different competencies in. A few other static details, like how long you've been at the company and those kinds of things, and that's how we end up arriving at an hourly rate for everybody. So just a teaser, we're interested in exploring this more. This one's relatively new, but we're always eager to talk about this stuff. So if you're interested at all, please feel free to reach out. You can contact us through the website, or you can get my contact details. I'm in the DDI Slack channels and so on. We'd love to chat about it, especially if you're interested in leveraging some of the things that we've been doing. And that's all I have. I'm interested if anybody has questions. I can take them. Again, I'll let the delay of the stream kick in. Okay, let's do this question. Allison is asking, I'm confused about how my employee hours from the previous quarter would affect my wages the next quarter. No need to apologize, Allison, if I was unclear. Let me jump back to the example. I think that might be the way to address this. Sorry. Let's come back. Nope, I went too far. Give me one sec here. Oh, I missed it. Basically, your wages in the current quarter are based on the previous quarter. So if you averaged working 30 hours a week in the quarter that just finished, then your current paycheck for the current 3 months would be based on that schedule, right? And then while you're working in the current 3 months, you track that time so that in the next quarter that becomes the basis for your paycheck subsequently. Hopefully that's clear. Let me know if not. I can explain further. Let me see if I can find that that example again in my. Here we go. So here's the example slide. Maybe this makes it a little bit more clear. I don't see any follow up there. Feel free to jump in if you have further questions. Whoops. I was just going to jump to the end here till I click. I'll just put this slide up. Feel free to jump in. I think we've got a few more minutes here. I'm happy to stick around. Okay, great. I see Allison saying it just clicked. That's great. I'm glad it got clear. So I think I forgot to mention at the beginning, there's a link to the slides here. This is the short one. If you're just typing it, this is the same link if you have a place to click it. I believe Mike had put it in the comments of the YouTube stream, and it's also in the DDI Camp Slack channel, I believe. So feel free to grab that. If you, I'll mention that there are speaker notes associated with the slides. They're mostly bullet points and stuff, but might help to give a little bit more context. If you go to that link and hit S, it will take you to a speaker view and show you those notes built right in there. So feel free to take a look at those. I've got the link to the GitLab project here if you're interested in just taking a look at the spreadsheet yourself to kind of understand how it fits together. And then down here at the bottom is just a link to the blog post that that Faye had noted and thought would be interesting to hear more about. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I will say thank you again. It's been a pleasure, and have a good rest of your Drupal Diversity Camp.